Hello and welcome to Leadership Dialogue. The office of the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory represents the highest civilian authority in the nation's capital. Now, when that authority clashes with an armed military officer on public land, it doesn't just make headlines, it triggers a constitutional debate. We are, of course, talking about the highly publicized confrontation between FCT Minister Nyesom Wike and a naval officer guarding a disputed land parcel belonging to a former chief of naval staff. Today, we dissect this incident, examining the legal, ethical, and leadership implication of the line between civil authority and military power. Joining us is Shedrack Okah, Director of Business Development, Nigerians in Diaspora. It's great to have you join us on this edition of Leadership Dialogue.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nkamiang.
Now, let's begin with the basics. The minister intervened over an illegal land development at plot 1946 Gadwa District. Now, the FCTA claims the land was unlawfully partitioned from a designated park. Now, the developer's lawyer claims the land was legitimately acquired 15 years ago by a firm, which later allotted a portion to the former naval chief's wife. Now, Shedrack, what is the single most critical legal element viewers should understand about this specific land dispute under the Land Use Act?
Okay, beyond the normal social frenzy that greeted this case, the most critical element the viewers must take home is the issue of the power of revocation of land, the overriding public interest. In Section 11 of the Land Use Act, the FCT Minister, as in this case, Nyesom Wike, is empowered by law to be responsible for the management and revocation of land, especially when it contradicts the original purpose for which the land is allocated, which in this case is garden and recreational parks. In this case, if you listen to the narrative very well, as given to us by the FCT Minister, this land had earlier been awarded in 2007. That is the original when they were awarded to a company for garden, for a recreational facility. But when they applied for the change of use, that the FCT did not grant that. And so the company, I think, sold part of that land to this naval officer who wants to use it for a different purpose. I think if the FCT administration will be able to prove all of this information, and we looked at it and see that it's legal, they have a basis in law to challenge that. So I think what matters the most important element here is whether that land is being revoked for the right purpose. Like in this case now, most lawyers have shed light into this issue, that it must be revoked in overriding public interest. Not the issue where you revoke the land from this person and have to give it to another, maybe cronies, as people have insinuated. In fact, the current INHM has also fingered rumor allegedly that it was part of going to be the beneficiary. So if this is the case, I think it will be a long ride.
Now, let's look at it a bit technically. The land was originally allotted for parks and recreation.
Yes.
Word has it that the wife of the naval chief intends to put a event center. Doesn't an event center fall under the utilities for recreation? I mean, it's not a residential property, but events. I mean, shouldn't an event center be part of the...
When I listened to Wike, I found him guilty of some sort. Because in trying to explain further, he said that land was originally awarded to a company who applied for change of use and was denied. The fact that they were denied does not cancel the original intent that the land was awarded to them. So the issue that he's struggling about, we need to now examine what is the naval chief going to be using the land for. If it falls within the category of gardens and parks or recreation, then he has not violated nothing. So that is a long road. But I think I took it from one of Wike's comments to know that it is just beyond this thing that he's doing, because he said that when they apply for change of use, they did not. So that does not invalidate the fact that it was allocated to the company who has sold part to the naval chief. But I think when they bring the facts before the court, which is the right thing to do, they'll be able to determine who violates what?
Well, the legalities aside, now the video went viral because of the heated verbal exchange. Human rights lawyer Femi Falana SAN stated that while Wike was carrying out his statutory duties, his lack of emotional intelligence and use of derogatory language towards a serving officer was a serious error. Now, everybody has seen that video. I mean, even yesterday, I was in a public place and I was hearing commercial drivers, have their own fair share on that video. But Shedrack, as a matter of leadership ethics and professional decorum, should a highly ranked civilian official, especially one with the president's ear, as in the case of Barrister Nyesom Wike, engage an armed officer in that manner, irrespective of who is legally right about the land? Because I understand there's a news report that suggested that even the Minister of State for Defense, former governor of Zamfara State, said they had advised the FCT minister not to, approach the matter in the manner in which he did. So, how do we explain Wike's expressions during that altercation?
I think I read somewhere in the social media very early this morning that Donald Trump's reaction to Nigerian delegates in the White House to discuss the ongoing, issues with the United States with respect to Donald Trump's statement. And he said that Nigeria is the only country that jokes about everything. That you hear war, they make jokes out of it, make skits out of it on serious matters. I think this issue should not just be treated with kids' glove. It's not just normal issues. For over the last 1 year, people, there have been outcry everywhere that Tinubu should caution Nyesom Wike. He's not the only minister that he has in the cabinet, but that rather he has been dragging his name to the mall. This obsession about power is just too much about Wike. Yes, clearly, he must understand that for a highly placed cabinet member like Nyesom Wike, who is a strong ally to the president, he can, of course, in several occasions, he represents the president, in that scenario. So he should not be caught, behaving, that is like a tout, if I don't want to mince word, abusing somebody on uniform. No, first of all, abusing somebody, whether or not the person is on uniform, another person, you don't use derogatory language on that person. Even the civil service, it is not allowed not to talk of a public officer or somebody on uniform under authority. It is condemnable. And that is the reason why they are demanding apologies. And I just want to respectfully thank the way the military, especially the IG of police, went about it. Because you can see, if you watch the scene very well, you see the DSS officers, the men of state services, were very calm. And we're trying to calm down. But the boot-licking police officers that were not trained, trying to, show loyalty to Wike, were the ones that were brandishing those guns. Especially knowing people in security agencies. Whether the police officer was equivalent in rank with the soldier has upper hand. But in this case, he was a junior, talking and pointing fingers. And the military officer told him, "You are my junior. You don't talk to me." But I thank God the IG came out, immediately condemning those actions and saying those people are going to be. So, Nyesom Wike did not do well, clearly spoken, because he represents the president in that scenario, and a public officer must not be caught behaving that way. It is shameful, and it is not something we are proud of.
You said something that in several capacities, Wike represents the president. Let's not forget, Wike at some point in time had presidential ambitions.
Yes.
Now, being the minister of the FCT, having the ear of the president, he can waltz into the corridors of the presidency at will.
Yes.
Doesn't it psychologically suggest that Wike sees himself as a de facto president?
He has said so in one of his media outlets. Who is the president? You are referring himself by insinuation that you are talking to me here. Why are you looking forward to talking to the president? He has said so, which was what drew public attention to Mr. President. Watch this guy. Like I said, in several occasions, when you think the president is going to reprimand him for overreaching what do I say? Maybe his authority, especially in the case of Rivers State. Mr. President rather came or joke over it and say he's his ally. He's not just a minister, he's a confidant, and joke over the issues. So if I insinuate that he has the president backing in this shenanigan,
is it that he has the president's backing, or maybe he has, if I might borrow that language, he has the balls of the president in his hands?
Either way, because you can see that up to now, it's a delicate issue, Mr. President. No statement from the presidency, because why people elevated the young man so much was that scenario would have caused death of Nigerians, because you saw men with arms trying to. So, and in the Federal Capital Territory, it's not good. Mr. President did not issue a statement as we speak, 72 hours after that scenario. Nobody from the presidency issued a statement. So what do we say to that? Is either he's afraid to caution the minister, I don't want to offend the military. I don't know why Mr. President is just, cold about this issue, but it's not a good scenario at all.
We'll take a quick break. When we return, we'll be discussing civil authority versus military power. So stay with us and keep sharing the stream.
Welcome to LJE Studio, where creativity meets production excellence. Whether you're shooting a podcast, hosting a live stream, recording interviews, or bringing your next big idea to life, we've built the perfect space for you. Everything you need to create premium content is right here. Come record, come create, come be inspired. Visit www.ljenigeria.org/LJE-studio or call 0705-245-3714 to book your session today.
Welcome back. Now, in this part of the show, we will explore the constitutional boundaries. The core of the problem, according to the FCT administration, is the misuse of institutional influence, the military uniform and presence to guard a private property. Well, Wike's aide suggested that the former naval chief was scammed, but resolved to using military might rather than seeking legal help. Under what legal or operational framework can a serving armed Nigerian naval officer be assigned to guard a private land parcel in the FCT, Abuja to be precise, especially one under a developmental dispute? Does this not constitute an abuse of military privilege and maybe a threat to civil authority, as we saw in the altercation between Wike and the naval officer?
Well, clearly put, there is no, the line is very clear between the duties and responsibility of our military, whether the Air Force, Navy, or whatever, serving men, whether in uniform, whether police or civil defense. It's very clear what should be their line of duties. Guarding, parks or land is not part of what is their first line discharge. But I can tell you in this case, they only came there because of what has happened. It is in this country where we see a lot of policemen carrying handbags, politicians' wives to the market. No matter how the IG comes out to speak, they still do this thing. And the IG have read the riot act even a day after that incident happened. You can see the barrage of policemen that accompany Nyesom Wike there. If you look at the standard practice, that alone is even an abuse. But you see, they are used to doing this kind of illegalities. But in the case of the naval officer, I think if you listen to the young man who is his orderly, he didn't just come there. It is because the FCT, like I said, themselves took laws into their own hands. Because we have seen countless times where even with court order restraining them, meaning when a court order restrains, means go and look into the issues properly for settlement before you, that is to stay action. But despite valid court order, the FCTA administration have deliberately looked away from valid court orders to demolish building, full-blown building, not to talk of this one. So in this case, the naval chief have deployed people to start work, and they've gone there to stop them. The first time, the second time. They allege that the policemen that came with the FCTA administration molested them and threatened to shoot them. That was why he asked his own orderly to accompany those guys to the place for war. So it wasn't a common practice for them to guard the land. It was circumstantial. So, but the constitution is very clear as to where the military should be at what point.
There have been alleged accusations that since Wike assumed office as minister, there have been clashes with the military. Just hours after that attempt in Gudu to raid that property, the facility of a retired general was destroyed. The video is making the rounds. The general said there was no prior warnings, no notice, no nothing. He just saw that the FCTA administration came with their caterpillars and they didn't even give him time to remove his properties from the bar because it was in a recreational area. So one is beginning to, the people are putting one and one together to say, one, is Wike deliberately going after retired servicemen who have served this country in different capacities? What is the agenda? Because the general was interviewed and he said, look, I couldn't even pick my documents. And right in his presence, these guys who pick scrap basically carted away everything the man had worked for. So there are suggestions that there might be more to this new move by the FCT minister under the pretext of I'm protecting the land of the Federal Capital Territory, but specifically going against military officers. And some say maybe that is even what propelled the former Naval chief to take the position he took to say, okay, since you don't recognize our service, we will not be...
my brother, that is a very dangerous signal. And it must be watched and stemmed immediately. Because I have listened to Wike when he accused one former GOC, Army General, have been being used by the Buhari administration when he was in office to molest him during elections. And the man came out and denied all of those. So we can see this is like a recurrent bitterness that Wike is holding against some military officers who were under command at the time. Because like I said, he must know the president, who is the commander-in-chief, has the right to deploy soldiers and all that. So he is using his past bitter experience that he had with some military general. If you put one and one together, of course, they can allege that that is what is informing his decisions. But it is a very, very dangerous scenario that may drag many of us. This is a civil role, but he's forcing the men in uniform to look something different. I look at the young man when he told him, let me educate you, sir. There is no such thing as a formal naval chief. He said an AVM is an AVM. Yes. And Wike said yes. He answered that. You cannot continue to say because he is retired. He said he's no longer serving. Come on, he wasn't just a teacher. Somebody to have served the country to the point of a general. You don't know what that means.
Exactly.
You don't know what that means. You must not undermine that service. You must not undermine the uniform. He mustn't do that. And this is dangerous. I said, Mr. President, must wait in. You will look at this thing as once they are able to file and see the trajectory of his judgment against the military, they may interpret that to anything. Anything can happen.
I like the line you have told, because shortly after, the current Chief of Defense Staff responded. And he said he didn't say anything about Wike, but basically celebrated the young officer and said, I think the first statement he said, we don't produce docile officers from the NDA. And I mean, for those of us who know the NDA, that was a very strong statement coming from the Chief of Defense Staff. The former Chief of Defense Staff, Army Staff, Burutai, also critical.
Irabo, all of them,
you know, and even the current Minister of Defense was quick to say, look, the military has its rights, you know. So there are schools of thought who are wary, like you rightly pointed out, about what this scenario could snowball into.
If not well managed.
Yes. Well, Minister Wike said he will not be intimidated or blackmailed in carrying out his duty to sanitize Abuja's land administration. He clarified that his on-site intervention was necessary to protect his enforcement officials who he claims have repeatedly faced violence and threats of shooting from armed men at site. Now, Shedrack, was Wike's physical presence giving the reported danger to his staff, as he claimed, a justifiable last resort to demonstrate the backing of the FCTA's political will, or was it an overreach that invited further escalation? I mean, jumping off the back of what we just discussed.
Yes, let me state very clearly that I stand with Wike not to be intimidated in carrying out his duties as guaranteed by the Constitution as a minister. It's just like saying the Minister of Works has given contractors, and he went to site. And when we heard a report that people are molesting, he wants to go to site to supervise what has happened. So he didn't do wrong in supervising or going to site. But what is wrong is the manner in which, when you go there to site and you've seen these people, discuss with them. After all, it is not the guys that were there were not the owners of the land. They are there in the authority of another person, in the orders of another person, and you make mention, you have, just like he did, what he did was even wrong, calling the chief of defense staff on the spot. I mean, there are a lot of things that went wrong in that case. You just called him as if you have it in your wings and caprices. This man didn't know why you called him, and he picks only for you to put him on public and then to make a statement. That alone is not good. Chief of defense staff, you called him, put him on the spot in a dispute, that it's not right. So, but all of these things, for him coming out, yes, if the directors and enforcement agencies have given a report on side of what has happened, there's nothing wrong in him coming as a minister, the political will to, give support to his staff. But there is no emotional intelligence displayed by Wike by trying to now engage himself in that kind of fist cuff. As we see, it wasn't looking good. And that is the reason why people commended the young officer. In fact, there is something he did. He took 2 steps. When Wike the shouting was becoming too, he took 2 steps closer to Wike. And when Wike was shouting, "Are you coming closer to me?" You saw the moment the guy took 2 steps close to Wike, all his boys reinforced and came close.
Yes.
At that point, the chief of defense staff said, whereas the civilians are wired to retreat when there is danger, the armies are wired to respond. They come closer. So a lot of things would have gone wrong, but we just thank God for God took charge. Because if a drunken police officer with Wike had opened the fire on the air, today we would have been talking of a different story altogether.
Definitely. Well, Wike's defiance is based on the idea that no individual, no matter how highly placed, will be allowed to act above the law. But the question here is, what are the long-term implications for governance if a minister in a clear display of civil authority is openly challenged and insulted by an armed officer? Though in the case of Yerima, he did not insult the FCT minister. It was the other way around. But we've seen situations. I remember on one edition of one of our shows here on LJE, there was a comparison which was brought up by an ex-user in the case of the governor of Lagos State, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, talking to a police officer and speaking with him in a very civil but authoritative manner. And Nigerians were comparing the two and said, this is a governor. And see the way he handled the matter. And you, a minister, see the way you handled the matter. So does this incident not weaken the civil institution in the eyes of the public and other civil servants?
Unfortunately, in Nigeria, we are growing into a situation where we are growing stronger men in our polity other than stronger institutions. In the first place, there is no act of loyalty to others or civility demonstrated by that naval officer that will justify the overall outcome that has happened. Because in the first place, if they have given notice before, as the young man claimed, that they've harassed their people, that general who is the owner of that land knows where to go to. is not to deploy more soldiers on site with certain level of authority that you can shoot at sight. That is not the best way. There are other civil ways, like Minister Wike also justifies his action. That he has, since he's been minister, he has received call from Obasanjo on a disputed land. He has resolved it. He has received call from T.Y. Danjuma on a disputed land with the FCT. He has resolved it. So what stopped this other general to have reached out to the minister, who in this case, whether he's small or is not worthy to, but he is there now. The minister would have reached out. I learned the directors came to stop my contractors on site. What's happening? Look into this. Wike felt he deserved such call from the general. So I don't want a situation where we paint the picture that being a general actually confers to you the orders to live above the law. Let these issues be looked in all ramification and let people be subject to following the rule of law.
There have been pictures that have shown that Wike is known to the general and the general is known to Wike. So some school of thought are suggesting that this may just be a personal matter.
Yes, and that is why I said it is very dangerous. Because like I said, there have been plethora of other cases where Wike have had with army generals. In some cases, they came out with valid court orders restraining them, but Wike went ahead. So, and the fact that he himself have his outbursts against the military when he was governor, that they were being used. So it will look as if he's following a personal vendetta. And it is not good for the polity. This case, Nigerians, Mr. President, we joke about everything. Number one, after that incident, about 2 army chiefs spoke. Chief of Defense Staff, Chief of Army Staff, PAS spoke. The current Chief of Defense Staff spoke. Police IG, PAS spoke. The current one spoke. All in this, and none spoke to the favor of Minister Wike. If you allow this issue to
even a former minister of aviation,
Shedrack Okah,
Federal Road Safety Corps Marshal,
spoke on this matter. So, like I said, Wike should not think he's too stubborn. He want to look at the law without following the plan, because he has challenged the guy. Come and develop this play. Let me see. It is not about show off of power. No, it is not supposed to be. They must follow some level of civil dialogue to reach out. If not, it sent a very dangerous signal. Of course, we know what we just went through in the last couple of weeks on rumors of military takeover and all that. You don't want to bring this so that they will feel that there is a deliberate action against people the military hierarchy. If you give that scenario, like Minister Wike by his own words said, he is no longer in service. He is retired. That his retired does not make him lower. He doesn't understand the army command. The current Chief of Defense Staff cannot talk to the other guy who has gone. He's still his boss. He gives you the compliment as his boss. So please, Minister Wike must be called to order. He's overreaching. We have said so.
We are in our final lap of the show. The FCT administration has briefed the service chiefs. Falana has called for an apology from Wike. So, what is the necessary non-negotiable part for the federal government to resolve this incident in a manner that strengthens the relationship between the civil authority and the military, rather than simply punishing individuals? I mean, what is the institutional reform needed? As we would like to say, what are the lessons learned?
In fact, that is where I did not totally agree with our legal luminary, Femi Falana, when he said they should compare Wike to give public apology. I don't think this is the issue of public apology. This is institutional now. This has outgrown between Wike and a retired army general. This is not about Wike. This is somewhat now snowball into institution, the military, and a governance as it is a government. So I think Wike himself said if he was a serving general, he would have gone to the military. No, the government should look into this. I don't know which I think the president must wade in. Is a minister you're talking about and a general who just retired that we're talking about. And you can see the command structure of the military. You cannot say because he's retired, he will look away. It's a dangerous signal that must be nipped. I repeat, Mr. President must issue a statement, whether behind closed doors, call these people together. Perhaps we can be generous enough to say, if you are a serving military officer and you know your land is on, publish their names, let them come, set up a committee to look into this issue. But beyond that, it is generating this kind of public interest because it has to do with the military hierarchy. How about other civilians who also have been unjustly dispossessed of their land and are located to cronies of several ministers? It's not just about Wike, other ministers as well. In this Wike issue, we have seen land allocated to his children, undeniable with facts. People presented papers, and I think it's not supposed to be so. Where is the civil service code where you cannot directly enrich yourself? You know, but people these days don't look into those, and that is a wider implication for the Nigerian society. They must look into all of this stuff and then resolve it once and for all. Now,
for upcoming leaders, what is the key leadership lesson from this entire episode, from the alleged scam to the confrontation itself?
In fact, for us, young people, we learn so much by the young military officer there. His composure, his demeanor, and also standing his guard, respectfully responded to the minister and said, I am a military officer. I have integrity. And then the third one, he said, I am not a fool. So those three words are very, very commanding words that people all over Nigeria, young men, must learn. I am a military officer. He is proud of his profession. I'm a military officer. It means I am not a politician. You may have your boys who pay loyalty to me. I know who I am. I'm a military officer. Number two, he said, I have integrity. I cannot be bought over by anything, money or whatever. I cannot be bought over. Number three, he said, I am not a fool. Don't allow people to ascribe what you are not to you. And that is a big lesson for us as young people. Respectfully, resist autocratic leaders, arrogant leaders who will go out of the law to do things that are not supposed to be. So we've learned so much a lot. And then the side of the minister, he has not conducted himself very well. Knowing fully well that he was a local government chairman for almost 6 years or 8 years. He was a chief of staff to the governor. He became a minister for state. He became a governor and then a minister and a presidential aspirant that almost won. And see, comporting himself this way. This is not just about this time. Almost every other time they do this. We've had in this country a sitting Senate president mocked Nigerians and say, go and be protesting. We'll be in our houses. Those kind of statements are not supposed to be. With certain leadership position, it's not supposed to be. But of course, Nigeria will joke about everything. And I pray this time around, we must not lose out on the key lessons to take out and then implement going forward.
Well, Shedrack, you've shed a whole lot of light on our conversation today on Leadership Dialogue. Thank you for your insightful analysis. The incident has laid bare critical tension in our governance structure, one that cannot be resolved with insults or threats, but only with institutional discipline and respect for the rule of law. It is a necessary call to action for the presidency to redefine the boundary between the uniform and the Constitution. The land in question is just one plot in Gadwa, but the implications extend to every civil servant, every uniformed officer, and every Nigerian citizen. The sanctity of civil authority must be protected for democracy to thrive, and we hope that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu takes the necessary steps to compel not just apologies, but institutional reform. Join us next week on Leadership Dialogue. Goodbye.